Hi, I'm Brian and welcome to this video, and today I'm going to be looking at the Doors' third album, Waiting for the Sun from 1968, and I'm going to be revisiting with it and also reimagining it slightly towards the end. Now for me, this album has always maintained a fairly consistent place in the Doors catalogue. I've always ranked the Doors' first album and LA Woman as sort of an A triple plus, the second album, Strange Days and Morrison Hotel, as an A plus. Then Waiting for the Sun comes in at B range, and Soft Parade has a grade all of its own. But recently, over the last week, I pulled the record out and gave it a listen. And it's an album that I haven't listened to for about 5 years. And before that, I hadn't probably listened to it for 20 years. So why 5 years ago? Well, in my position as a drama teacher, I often staged and direct plays, and after the plays are finished, we have an after party at which the kids eat pizza, listen to music, dance, etc. And it was at one of these after parties that I noticed that a student had gone over to the sound system and put on The End by the Doors. And I walked over and I said, "Do you really think this is kind of an appropriate choice with all the little kiddies around?" And she goes, "But I love this song." And I said, "I love it too, but what about that section with the, father, yes, son, etc." And she goes, "Ah, yeah." And so she changed it over to something else. Fast forward 5 years ago, but about 5 months later after that, and she came to school after graduating and she gave me a present. And the present was this album. And it was Waiting for the Sun. And this is the 2018 remastered copy by Bruce Botnick with a lovely matte cover. And how beautiful is that cover anyway? I think it's an absolutely gorgeous cover with the sun going down, or is it coming up in the background? It is a gatefold sleeve with the lyrics for Celebration of the Lizard on one side, and there we go to the other for the Celebration of the Lizard. And it's also got one of these annoying Unipack things where you have to get the album out from inside. Ugh, I absolutely can't stand those things. But the good news is that it does come in a polylined sleeve. There we go, polylined sleeve. And just for good measure, they even throw in an original Electra sleeve as well, as it might have come at the time, which is pretty cool. This pressing is very quiet and free from static and pops and clicks and all that. But when I say very quiet, I also mean in volume as well. I was listening to it last night, finished off 5-1 at the end, and then put on another album, Emergency Third Rail Power Trip by Rain Parade, and that was just so much louder. Anyway, out it came in July of 1968. There we go. I'm happy to have this copy, by the way. Very happy. And out it came in July 1968, and it went to number one, and it stayed there for 4 weeks. But we reached sort of an impasse here because initially, with the first two albums, the songs had come from a stockpile of songs, which was now basically dry in the studio. So they faced a very interesting situation as to whether they were going to dredge up the bottom of the barrel in terms of the songs which had been written back as far as 1965, or create new and original songs. Now, just a disclaimer here. I've loved and listened to and watched the Doors for many years, but I've also forgotten more things about the Doors than I can probably care to remember. So if I do make a mistake throughout here, please have no hesitation in pointing it out gently in the comments. And so let's get into it, but stay tuned at the end after our deep dive for a reimagined perfect world track list for this album. I've got a couple of interesting ideas. But until then, why don't we get it together just one more time? So the album begins with Hello, I Love You, which was the second single from the album. I mean, what's going on with that? I mean, surely it should have been the first. Anyway, went to number one, and then immediately sort of got criticism that they had just lifted the idea completely from the Kinks' All Day and All of the Night. I mean, sure, they're similar, but all art is theft, and it's not like they're plagiarizing the song. And I think Ray Davies gets the publishing for all of the money that's earned in London or Europe as well. So, live and let live here a little bit. I'm kind of more interested in the idea that John borrowed the drum pattern from Ginger Baker on the Sunshine of Your Love track. Written in 1965, originally recorded on the Rick and the Ravens demo. It's a cool song. It's got some great fuzz guitar. I love that Hawaiian moment in the middle where Robbie's playing a lap steel or a pedal steel, or is it just a slide guitar? And it's a great song for just driving around and summertime cruising like I used to do in my VW Beetle. Great lyrics too. Sidewalk crouches at her feet like a dog that begs for something sweet. Do you hope to make her see you, fool? Do you hope to pluck this dusky jewel? Hello. It's a great way to start the album. It's not the way I'm going to start the album later on, though. We move and segue straight into Love Street, which is the B-side to Hello, I Love You. And interestingly enough, Jim preferred this song, and maybe because it was written for Pam. It's quaint and cute, it's pretty and beautiful, but it's very conventional. I think the idea of Love Street really plays into that idea of the summer of love. But there's nothing really psychedelic about this song. Still, who doesn't feel happy after hearing it? And it's even got a spoken section. Whoa. I see you live on Love Street. There's a store where the creatures meet. I wonder what they do in there. Summer Sunday and a year. I guess I like it fine so far. And that's obviously over the years has garnered so much attention, this idea that he likes it fine so far. And there's a sense again that there's sunset coming on this album, and that we're at the dawning of the end of an age, which is an interesting thing, the duality between sunset and sunrise. It's nice to hear the la 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 la's in the outro. Playful, it's cute, it's good. But darkness descends very quickly on the next song, Not to Touch the Earth. And we have something from Celebration of the Lizard. You know, I think I might have said, if I didn't, that I came to this album after hearing Absolutely Live, and the side with Celebration of the Lizard on is just dynamic, and yearning to hear the studio version. It's even more terrifying and oppressive given the fact that it follows after Love Street. And let's think, this is 1968. Who in the hell was doing music like this at the time? The closest I can think of is probably Frank Zappa and his chrome-plated Megaphone of Destiny, but still, there's non sequiturs in the lyrics, which are random and surreal. But the surrealism here is not the cute, I had a lovely dream and I woke up and, oh my goodness, or the dreamlike state. It's a nightmarish vision, a Hieronymus Bosch type of vision. And we begin with those the smooth groove, down, 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 down. But immediately we're being warned, nothing left to do but run, 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 let's run. And then the dissonance of the keyboards and the guitars merge together with danger, and they're like a child that's just been let loose upon all the instruments. It's absolutely chaotic, and it culminates in one of Jim's great screams before going down to, I am the Lizard King, I can do anything. And those, it's, you know, it's like a soundbite. It's like clickbait as soon as you hear that sort of stuff, isn't it? And those non sequiturs I was talking about. Some outlaws lived by the side of the lake, the minister's daughters in love with a snake. And dead president's corpse in the driver's car. The engine runs on glue and tar. Wow. Would have loved to have heard a lot more of this. But then we do move into sort of to wash ourselves clean a little bit of catharsis, and we go to Summer's Almost Gone. And to me, this reminds me a lot of the first album with like songs like the Crystal Ship and 20th Century Fox. It possesses a drenched sort of sundown mood about it, and Ray's keyboards shimmer like the sinking sun on the horizon. Robbie's slide guitar really adds to that beach at sunset feel. I don't know, maybe I think the words could have used a little bit more attention here, because the word gone in Summer's Almost Gone is used 14 times throughout this song, and even the bridge is used twice. Morning found us calmly unaware. Noon burned gold into our hair. At night we swim the laughing sea. When summer's gone, where will we be? There's nothing wrong with those lyrics at all. It's a very cool song. It just seems a little bit half-hearted, and never better summed up by when Jim says, "We had some good times, but they're gone. It's like, I've given up already. And maybe he had to a certain extent at that point during the recording of it. We come then on to Wintertime Love, which to me feels particularly antiquated. I mean, I don't know what this song is doing on a Doors album, but having said that, it's something we admire and champion about the band, isn't it? That they were prepared to play around with so many styles. And remember, if music of any style or shape gives you pleasure, then who am I to argue with your opinion? But it's interesting on an album called Waiting for the Sun that the one moment of romance and the one moment of, I don't know, beauty and tenderness is evoked on a song called Wintertime Love. It's okay. It gives the band an opportunity to shine like Ray when he's playing with his harpsichord. And I absolutely love the first half of the instrumental. It's very dreamy and happy. And it definitely, however, prepares us for the next song. And here's an irony of all ironies. After listening to this album for about the past 3 weeks, well, the past week, I've probably listened to about 5 times over the past week, guess which song has just stuck in my head like glue? Wintertime Love. Still, I could just move it off the album a little. But it does set us up for the next song. It's The Unknown Soldier, the first single off the album. The eerie opening with the keys and the vocals sets the mood beautifully before we break into one of the funkiest grooves this band ever came up with. From the snap of John's drums to that syncopated guitar and Ray's keyboards. It's a complete epic in 3 minutes and one of the greatest anti-war songs written. It's never cliched or hokey, and that military drumming in the build-up to the firing squad is absolutely sensational before we have that suspense before the gunshot rings out, which to me sounds like Robbie's got a tube amplifier and just dropped it in the studio. Maybe that's what happens. Who knows? And then the celebration of the end of Jim's shouting, the war is over and it's all over, baby. It's very cathartic. But having said that, there are still those death-tolling bells that are ringing in the background and underpinning the outro. The lyrics really echo the idea, too, that this was the first war that was ever seen on primetime TV. Breakfast where the news is read, television, children fed, unborn living, living dead, bullet strikes the helmet's head. Wow, imagining hearing that and then seeing the atrocities of the war on your TV while having breakfast or dinner. Anyway, a very much an interesting collage of songs in the first side. Let's flip it over and see what the second side brings. Side 2 takes us to the plains of Spain and Portugal with some stylistic experimentation that really works with that Spanish flamenco guitar. And once again, I ask the question, who else was doing this in 1968? I'm sure somebody can point it out to me, but still, it's not kitschy, it's not hokey once again. It's absolutely beautiful and breathtaking. And then Jim's voice comes crooning over the top like liquid gold until we get to that wonderful moment of silence, which adds suspense before the song just completely breaks out with those keyboards and that electric guitar. I love the sound of the wind whispering or howling, in fact, over the final verse. Trade winds find galleons lost in the sea. I know where treasure is waiting for me, silver and gold in the mountains of Spain. I have to see you again and again. And we can't underplay the importance of John's drumming here. Absolutely amazing, the fills and the syncopation of the timing that he's got, and the swirling sort of rotary sort of speaker that fades out at the end is absolutely beautiful, which then takes us into, so classic, which takes us into My Wild Love. Again, some definite experimentation. I wonder whether this time if it was a result of inspiration or necessity, inspiration or desperation, because there's a certain feeling that the band had sort of given up. There weren't the songs there to be able to play, and they'd given up a little bit because Jim was stonkered half the time, and so they tried something a bit different. Still, they do pull it off like men possessed and really give us that sense of being on the chain gang and chanting. Is there a plot to this tune, or is it just mere character portrayal? Nonetheless, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, and I quite enjoy it to break up the moments on this album. And we have some beautiful lyrics. My wild love is crazy. She screams like a bird. She moans like a cat when she wants to be heard. Then, after that, we go into the song We could be so good together. And to me, this is almost authentic, contemporary 60s psychsploitation. I am struggling with some good things to say about this song. And it's interesting that when I first transferred all of my songs from CD onto my iPod, this was the one song on the album which wasn't included. And I feel as though, for example, this song would never have made the first album if it had been around there, and somebody can tell me if it was. Suppose we have a nice fuzz tone from Robby. Then again, I suppose lyrically there are some moments. I mean, we hear that it goes on and on about we can be so good together. Yeah, it goes on and on. But in the verses, there is actually some beautiful lyrical poetry, which again gives us the darkness to the light. The time you wait subtracts the joy, beheads the angels you destroy. Angels fight, angels cry, angels dance, and angels die. Now that is beautiful. But when you put it like this, the time you wait subtracts the joy, beheads the angels you destroy. Angels fight, angels cry, angels dance, and angels die. I mean, doesn't kind of work nearly as well. Enough about that song. I hope this cuts in pretty well because I completely forgot to talk about this song on my first time through recording this video. Yes, the River Knows. Well, I totally adore this song. The piano is beautiful throughout. Ray's playing is absolutely exquisite. And the combination between Ray and Robby, particularly in the instrumental section, is, as Ray has suggested, is the closest that Robby and Ray ever got to sounding like Bill Evans and Jim Hall. So that's pretty fine praise poured upon Ray by himself. Indeed. Now, some might accuse Jim of being a little bit too Frank Sinatra with his crooning on this one, but I totally disagree. His vocal is sublime and yearning and absolutely gorgeous. I'm going, but I need a little time. I promised I would drown myself in mystic heated wine. Free fall now, river flow, on and on it goes. Breathe underwater till the end. Once again, this song which has deathly implications. But back to his crooning, it's not like he sung the song like, I'm going, but I... No, in fact, like, I'm going, but I need a little time. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. I promised I would drown myself in mystic heated wine. You know, he didn't do that. It's a beautiful song. Give it up for Yes, the River Knows. Then we move on to 5-1, and I'll be straight up about this song, is that I came to it after the Incendiary version, after hearing the Incendiary version and loving it of Absolutely Live, which to me stands way above the studio effort. It's an incredible song, though, which is given a disservice because Jim just sounds so drunk. And now there's one thing about if you've got rebellious heroes, you can't expect them to be perfect or sober all the time, but he just sounds stonkered here. And there is a rumor that he had to be held up by roadies and hangers-on in the studio just to be able to get to the microphone. But if you listen, you can really hear that alcohol expressing itself. And it's a shame because it's such an amazing song. And I feel as though for the first time on the album also, the band is affected by this and they turn in quite a stodgy performance. But having said that, it's a stunning call to the counterculture, which is underpinned by a belief that change might actually be possible. And how, though, the next few years would put an end to that dream. And it's even in the lyrics. Again, that darkness to the light, that hope, that forlorn despair. The old get old and the young get stronger. May take a week and it may take longer. They got the guns, but we got the numbers. Gonna win, yeah, we're taking over. Come on. So all of that is optimism, that call to action. But then immediately we hit the summer of love squarely between the eyes. Your ballroom days, the Avalon, the Fillmore, your ballroom days are over, baby. Night again is drawing near. That sense of sunset. Shadows of the evening crawl across the years. You walk across the floor with that flower in your hand, trying to tell me no one understands. Trade in your hours for a handful of dimes. All depressing there, but then gonna make it, baby, in our prime. So once again, we go from the despair to the optimism. And it wouldn't surprise me, as I've heard, if these lyrics weren't a pastiche of snippets of poetry that have been put together already. Uh, but it's a killer song. I love the chanting vocals on "Get Together One More Time, Get Together One More Time," and then the music lifts and swells to this crescendo, and then, to me, Jim spoils it by coming in late. Now, some people may love this and go, haha, isn't that ironic or whatever, and if you love it, that's great. That's fantastic. I love that you love it. But to me, it's just, ugh. So, what else was I going to say? Still, okay, so I much prefer the live version. But if I heard this song in isolation, I bet I would say it was a masterpiece. 5-1. It is a great way to close out the album with that call to action, that darkness and that rock, and the band just pushing it towards the end. But I feel as though it's just missing something. Anyway, so that is how the album ends. But how should it have begun, and how should it have been put together in a perfect world, in a parallel universe? Let's think about that. So I'm not straying from my original point of view that this album is not quite as good as the first, second, fifth, or sixth albums. There's something missing, and that's not terribly surprising when you think about the differences that we have between love and violence and sunrise and sunset on this album. There's something missing in the middle, and I've started to think that it might be this: Waiting for the Sun. And this is the EP from 1968, Australian pressing, a single. And the interesting thing about this album is, or this EP, is that Waiting for the Sun is not on it. So it's absent again. But as we look inside, it gets even more interesting on the Asta label. And that is that the EP is no longer called Waiting for the Sun. It's called Light My Fire. It's really quite good, that one, because it does give you the full album version of Light My Fire. But still, Waiting for the Sun is missing. So I asked the question, how could Waiting for the Sun be better? How could it be more complete? How could it be a masterpiece? And I think the answer lies into the song Waiting for the Sun. I would love to have seen that incorporated into the album. And I believe it was tried in the studio and dismissed. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. But I want to reimagine this album away from the idea of Paul Rothchild being a perfectionist, of Jim being too stonkered half the time, having to do so many retakes. I mean, apparently Unknown Soldier took 130 takes before they got it right. And just think, in a perfect world, what would have happened if everything just went right? So I'm going to give you my track listing for this album, and I ask you to consider, would it have been up there with all those other really great albums? So I'm starting off the album with Waiting for the Sun. I mean, I think it just gives us a sense of unity, a sense of completeness, that we have the title track on the album. And it was beautiful on Morrison Hotel, but I think it would work brilliantly here. Then let's hit the audience immediately with The Unknown Soldier and really get that radicalization out into the mix. Follow that up. I think we've got to lighten it up a little bit from here with Hello, I Love You. Why not? It's got to be there. But then get into that experimentation with Spanish Caravan, beautiful. And then I bring it down a little bit with Yes, the River Knows, and have that delicacy and that beauty absolutely swinging. And that prepares us magnificently for a perfectly incendiary take, an out of this world exciting take of 5-1 to finish side A. Those are the things I would wish for. So just getting and Waiting for the Sun and a re-recording of 5-1, beautiful. What a side of music. Flip the disc and give me the whole suite of Celebration of the Lizard. Love it on Absolutely Live. I would love to have heard it as the entire B-side as was originally intended. And if they could have just got it together, I think those two sides together would have created, and if you could just get it together one more time, I think those two sides would have created a phenomenal album, and one which challenged and prodded the listener to really think about their experiences they were listening to it and their experiences in life. I don't know. What do you think? Have I got it wrong? Leave a note in the comments if you would just tinker with it in any way, or whether you just leave it absolutely the way it is. And I guarantee that I get that there's an absolute argument to do that. Anyway, it's been a real blast going back through Waiting for the Sun. It's been a total pleasure listening to the album over and over again. And remember, as I said earlier, if music of any style, shape, sound, or substance gives you pleasure, then who am I to argue with your opinion? If you like this video, please hit like, or maybe even subscribe. You know you want to. But until next time, hope you're having a wonderful time, wonderful day. I'm Brian. All the best, and bye now.